Welcome back, Process Preparation and Performance. I'm Duke Keith Simmons, and we have some St. Louis flavor for you tonight. Coach Chad Masters out of Vianney. Coach Simmons knows Coach Masters, and we are fortunate to have him. Coach Masters and I coached against each other. He probably doesn't even know that because I was a little dude on the sideline and didn't really matter. I wasn't I'm still not a name in the coaching industry, so it's really okay. But
I think you were probably thoroughly
back.
kicking our tail in right there, weren't you?
we'll go past that. We'll skip that for,
Okay, there you go.
a little while. JR, new developments. Apparently, people have started to figure out that COVID is not dead. It's actually going up because people are going to bars. They're going every place. States are getting shut down. St. Louis is on like phase 1 still. I've heard just this week, Washington University canceled fall sports. I've seen numerous Twitter posts that schools are shutting down activities. We're definitely going to talk to Coach Masters and how that's affecting him because he's down in that area. But on a side note, Tesla was some big news this week.
Yeah.
Tesla, the car company, Elon Musk. We're going to build the Cybertruck, of which I ordered one.
Yes, you did.
We're going to build a Cybertruck in Austin, Texas. Now, I've been to Austin, and their motto is keep Austin weird, right?
Yeah, it is.
Keep Austin weird. And it's pretty weird because you can get barbecue in one shop, and right next door there could be a dude doing like tattoos and clown stuff and playing music in the next one. It's totally funky. It's a really cool place. Loved it while I was there. It's kind of one of those barbecue tours where you know it's good because you don't see a vegetable for like 3 days. You're only eating like brisket and ribs and stuff. It was really pretty good. But you have a story about Austin that I think people really need to hear. So, be discreet with your story. Give us the lowdown.
Austin.
Remember I work at a Catholic school here, JR, so keep it clean, man.
This won't be that bad.
All right.
So Austin, I've got 2 brothers that live in Texas, so I'm down there when I can be. And, we took a bunch of kids down for a baseball camp, actually, UT, several years ago when I was coaching baseball at Jeff City with Coach Ash. And Austin is an interesting place. Just Lance Armstrong's bike shop's down there, which, I still like him regardless of what he did. But there was somewhat of a pseudo local celebrity down there. And if anybody's been to Austin listening to this and kind of hears this, you'd be like, yeah, I kind of know where you're going. But there was a guy down there, and he would sometimes do some interesting cross-dressing and some other stuff, and just a very well-known person down there, and people would invite him to birthday parties and whatnot. And there's actually a day down there named after him now. And you'd see him walking around the streets occasionally, and everybody be like, oh yeah, there goes Leslie and whatnot. And it's like, who's this? And then, you kind of learn the story. They made a documentary on him, and it's kind of cool. Wow. It's a little different situation for sure down there. But yeah, huge news with Tesla. I got Coach Duke to join the electric car revolution here about 3 weeks ago.
All in 2 feet. Jumped in.
Yeah. And hey, I got another piece of news actually for people. There is a guy that is reviving the Missouri Helmet Project that used to be on most sports and all this. And he's got a Twitter called @HelmetMissouri. He's letting us post the files up temporarily so people can go to our website, breakdownsports.com, and converse with him a little bit. And he's doing some excellent work on those helmets. I'm so glad that's coming back. And that was something that I really enjoyed looking at. And I know there's a lot of other people enjoyed it too. So good stuff.
Yeah, awesome. That is really good. I've seen some of that coming across Twitter, and I've seen some of the helmets, and it's something to be proud of. I mean, we take a lot of time, energy, effort, thought. It's not just, hey, go out and wear this helmet and do whatever, right? There's there's a lot to go in. And so whether you're Rockhurst and you haven't changed in 50 years, or whether you're that still has class. I mean, it's like Penn State, they haven't changed their unis, right? Or you're trying to put a stamp on something that's new and exciting. It's a good deal. You should check it out. Breakdownsports.com, Twitter handle JR mentioned, and we're going to go. But Coach Masters is here tonight. And if anybody has listened to this podcast, one thing, JR, I'm very proud of with this podcast, and this is no lie. This is not me fluffing anything or anything. We have not shied away from talking about faith. Okay.
Sure.
We haven't. We've let anybody talk about what they want. And Coach, I have to ask a question because it means a lot to me. I'm Catholic myself. You know, I'm going to use a line from Brian Kula. I still throw interceptions as a believer. I still do that. There's still times that you're shaking your fist at God and going, are you really there? What's going on? But Coach started the program at Tolton and then decided, I'm going to continue on that path. Catholic school, private Catholic school, you went there. So Coach, it's your time. Before we get to the script that we sent you, what does it mean to you to be coaching at a Catholic school, a faith-based school?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. That's I guess the basic cliche answer there. I know that whenever, I spent 12 years in public school teaching and coaching the first 12 years of my career. And that's where, I met JR and a lot of people. And I've got nothing but respect for people who teach in public schools. I've done that. I'm the son and grandson of public school educators. So it's nothing against that at all. I just, at some point, I really kind of talk about it a lot when it comes to my faith in general. And I'm a person that's grown into my faith a lot. I wasn't like you said, I was probably throwing a lot of interceptions and fumbling the ball quite a bit, like in my early years. And that's something I still,
another one.
Work through a lot now, even at age 43, but I'm definitely a work in progress. But I would say, towards the back end of that 12 years, I really started to feel a strong calling and pull towards, my faith and the Catholic education model. It had nothing to do with wanting to build a power program or go out and get kids. It had nothing to do with that. It was really more about something internal in me that I felt was missing. And I've always had the term, it's not one I made up. Obviously, it's through the years. A calling is when the gladness of your soul meets the needs of the world. And I really felt that my move into parochial education at the Catholic schools truly was a move that was bringing both a gladness in my soul, but also a way to connect my faith to other young people in a more open environment. I was always involved in FCA and things in the public schools, and I love that, and I love that model there. But it just something in me was missing, and I just kept feeling that pull, that call, that tug to really jump into it. And I took some risks there. I mean, walk away from a little more financial stability that you might find in the public school system a little bit. But, it really started to begin as I grew as a coach and as an educator and in my own faith, all the stars started to align. And I knew that's where I needed to be. And just like we've got amazing coach educators that are serving the communities in the public schools, I felt that maybe my role, my job in education and coaching was to fit in and provide that same quality into the Catholic school system. And I'm a firm believer too that I'm about the mission and the values of the school and meshing that with my program. I was, when I started at Tolton, that's what brought me there. And then that's also what got me to Vianney too, was that desire to really do that. And so I really, tried to incorporate a lot of faith and a lot of my own faith journey into my coaching to let those young men know, especially that, we don't have to be perfect. We are all sinners. We are all works in progress, and that's fine. If we had it all figured out, would we really need it? Right. It's kind of people say, hey, you're a sinner. Why are you going to church? So, man, that's why I need church right there, because I am, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Right.
but it's just be able to provide that spiritual guidance in a way that maybe I couldn't in other ways. So it goes back, like I said, my soul is invigorated by doing it this way, and I feel that I'm doing His work in this corner of the world, and that's really what drew me to it. So it's strange. It's when I start talking, sometimes people look at you like you're a little crazy, like like, oh, you're hearing voices and this that. But no, it wasn't even that. It was just something kept pulling me, something kept tugging me that way. And I try to dip my toes in it here or there, but I never really felt you know, um, strongly about it early on in my career. But then as I just kept developing as a man, I just felt it was the best thing for me to do. So that might have been a long answer for a short, question, but that's really what brought me. And I don't want to go back. And again, it has nothing to do with one model's better than the other. It's just, it's just right for me and right for what I do, and how I believe. Because I mean, hey, we're all in this together, public, private, religious schools, we're all in just trying to make a difference in the lives of these young kids through a game of football. And I think the more quality people we can get across the board in all those schools, just the better for our society. And like I said, it's just like some people like chocolate ice cream, some people like vanilla ice cream. I happen to like coaching in a Catholic school. So, and if you look at my teams, it ain't like I got, like 5 stars running all over the place. So it's not, there's a little difference there. So, I do believe we do things the right way, though.
And Chad, you kind of mentioned it. You spent half of your career coaching in the public schools with Hickman and then with me at JC. And then you went to Tolton, and now you're on down to Vianney. And I'm kind of curious, what have you been able to take from kind of each stop along the way?
That's a great question. Actually, interesting thing was my first year of coaching, I was student teaching, and I coached for Greg Nesbitt at Hickman High School as a student teacher and a volunteer assistant. Coach wide receivers there. Greg and I still laugh about that today. Of course, he's up at Truman State now as a head coach. That's why I started, got that experience. I didn't know nothing, nothing there, and I'm just trying to figure it all out. But I ended up at Centralia High School as my first coaching job. Coached for Earl Bennett for a couple of years there before I came down to JC. And hold on, I gotta let this dog in.
Sorry,
that's all right.
He's gonna be barking to keep the neighbors going. This is what happens when you do podcasts at home. So I started off in Centralia, and what's funny is I think in those first 2 to 3 years, Centralia and Hickman, I kind of began to figure out what the coaching was, from, things like taking care of like laundry and equipment and, stuff like that. Like you just think that getting that whistle and going out there on a field and coaching's coaching, but you start to realize there's a lot more to that. And I was really blessed with those first 3 years to be, with some great mentors in Greg Nesbitt and Earl Bennett. Both Hall of Fame football coaches in the state of Missouri. And Earl really did a good job of taking me under his wing and trying to coach me to be a coach. And so I started to learn those little kind of intricacies. And I probably still didn't know a ton, but he saw something in me, and he did a lot of mentorship on me. And that was the thing I took from that was, one, being able to look at your staff and look in there, and they may not be the ideal, coach or this or that, but trying to mentor them and build them the same as you would a team. I learned that from Earl a lot. And just, obviously, both him and Greg, both toughness, and physicality and things like that. Then I ended up down there in Jeff City. I came in when Coach Cole resigned, retired. He's been in and out since then, but whenever he kind of hung it up and Tony Grosso took over, and I was blessed to be there. That was almost 8 years, I think, something like that, to go through Tony and also and Ted LePage when he came in also. And that was, Jeff City, I say, you know, if I had to maybe go back and coach for a coach again, it might be Earl Bennett again. That guy was just that good of a dude. You know, I loved coaching with him, and I didn't appreciate it as much then because I was a young coach and I was off to conquer the world. You're thinking you're gonna be the head coach, and this, you know, you're gonna do all these great things. So I wasn't where my feet were enough there. You know, I learned, I did good things, but when I look back on it, I get more out of it now than I should have let myself have more of it at that point. But, you know, with Jeff City, you know, it was an unbelievable experience and a hard experience in the same bout. And anyone who's coached at Jeff City High School knows what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, the kids, you know, and working at that time was starting to become kind of a high poverty district. So you got to deal with a lot of that. But the kids were awesome. I mean, those kids would run through a wall for you most of the time. And so that was unbelievable. It was really interesting to see the dynamic of the pressure situations on coaches, both with Tony and both with Ted, to see that kind of community pressure and external pressure and how they handled that, good and bad, you know, and how that affected me as a coach on those staffs, you know, and how it affected my role and what I could do. So it started to give me a little bit different perspective. I really started to learn, you know, I think those years in particular were great years for me to learn how to be a fundamental football coach, you know, to really get in the nuts and bolts of how to teach blocking and tackling and the importance of that and running the football and doing all these things. Although people know me now would laugh if I just said running the football, but, you know, you know, but to learn those nuances of like what is a total program, you know, strength and conditioning to, you know, community service. I mean, to really see that I think it was 8 years there that I spent there was super formative to me as far as what I would be like as a future head football coach. You know, so I think that was a big thing for me to go through that and to also see how do you handle outside pressure? How do you handle people on the outside of you? How much impact do they have on the program, you know, and how to manage that, how to include them, but at the same time, maybe keep them at arm's length, you know, and really start to learn that. I also got to see guys coach their own kids during that time too, you know, which was kind of cool, you know, because that I'm sure we'll talk about that later on, but that I got to see kind of what to do with that. So those 8 years were really formative, I think, to me as just a coach of where I'm at right now. And I wouldn't trade those for anything. And then I went back to Columbia. I had a young child, my oldest son. I was just spending too much time away. So I ended up taking a job there at Hickman for 3 and, you know, love the guys I work with. Got a great opportunity. Arnell Monroe was a great friend of mine through many years, you know, and this is when he was the defensive coordinator. Jason Wright was the head coach at the time. Great guys. And again, there it was interesting because you got to see things kind of from the other side of maybe you're one of those programs that's just kind of in the mix. Like you're competitive enough, but you can't quite get up over that, you know, maybe dip below it a little bit. But to kind of see sometimes if you don't have all the things super organized and your ducks in a row, those things became very glaring from where I came from for the 8 years there, Jeff, to those 3 I had at Hickman to see, you know, where were the holes I needed to fill if I was to run a program. And I think those 3 years were great for me too, because it really gave me the idea that I'm ready to do this. You know, that was when I first, you know, you always had the idea that you're going to be a head coach at some point, but then you kind of, you know, you aren't quite sure when the right time is. You know, I took a couple shots at it while I was at Jeff City, never really came through for things. And so then I basically kind of got, you know, when I was at Hickman, I knew I was going to do it. I can do this because I was always the kind of guy, you know, lead me or I will lead, you know, and I developed that over a period of time. And so I knew at that time it was time for me to kind of go and do my own thing and try, you know, throw myself into the fire, so to say, and really try to be a head coach. And I was blessed with the opportunity to both mesh my desire to get into Catholic education with my desire to be a head football coach there at Tolton. And that's kind of where I jumped in there. So, I mean, do you want me to talk about my Tolton experience, I guess?
Well, that's coming. That's coming because What I'm going to ask is going to be a segue to that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's this. I was at Tolton when you were there. We did some 7-on-7 over
Mm-hmm.
summer. I stood across from you on the sidelines. I watched a program that wasn't there, a school that wasn't there, develop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for you, I want you to take what you learned, or tell us what you learned at all those other stops. And now you're somewhere where you show up and they don't have anything. They've got
Mm-hmm.
nothing. So it's not like JC where you roll out and they've got a sled for whatever you want. It's not like Hickman where they got a weight room.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Vianney. It's not like Centralia.
Mm-hmm.
At Centralia, I don't think there's anybody at home on Friday night. I think they're over at the football stadium because I've played against them on a Saturday at 1:00. And I was like, this is the entire town. There's nobody else left. I mean, the police department is over in the end zone, for heaven's sakes. Okay. So you're there, the building gets built. It's your head coaching gig now. It's the stuff that you're getting called to. And I love that definition. It's a beautiful definition. I stole it. I'm writing it down.
Go ahead. It's not mine.
What would you tell yourself now if you had a chance to go back and talk to that guy who took the Tolton job? You thought you knew this, but I wish you knew this.
I think if I could go back in time, look at that, I'd think two things. Take it slower, and also, appreciate the moment of where you're at. You know what I'm saying? Like to not, everything was so fast. So, like you hit the ground running, and I had these big aspirations and these big, dreams about what we were going to do and this and that. And I remember that first practice when we had basically freshmen and a handful of sophomores, very limited playing experience. Man, we had to teach. It was literally, I felt like I was going back in time to like a middle school football where we had to teach kids to put pads in pants, and, at times, especially early on, did I push too fast too early? Did I not appreciate the little successes and moments that we had early on in the program? And we built, and we were going in a great trajectory, and I loved where we were going as a program. But there was times that maybe I could have taken a step back and been a little bit more relaxed and been a little bit more patient and understand that maybe we can't go from point A to point D right now. We need to go B to C, to D. Because you get that competitive, like you said, first head coaching gig, man. You want to go prove yourself. You want to like I'm the guy, like not that you're an ego driven guy, but you've been waiting for this as a young coach, and it was a different thing. I think if anyone has the opportunity, take the opportunity to build a program from scratch. It was an unbelievable, opportunity and moment for me to go through that. And it was very, very challenging, very rewarding too. Very challenging, but very rewarding. But you had to think of everything, I mean, like you said, what do you do about sled? What do you do about equipment? What's the design of uniforms or helmets or, making sure you have all these things. And you thought about that, but you didn't really, like you said, I might've been more suited to step into a job that, was already had everything there, because I wasn't really prepared, maybe I was prepared to be a head coach, but I don't think you ever are that to actually go through that first job. Are you ever prepared for that? But, to go back again, to just maybe take it a little slower and to be a little more patient. And I also think one of the things that be real intentional about your culture of your program, especially in a program that has no culture to begin with. It's one thing to go and change culture. But the reality is, if you have nothing, you've got to do everything. Like, we had to be the leadership of the program initially until we could grow that leadership. And that was one of the things I thought that maybe, again, if I would have taken that slower, we could have been better about building that leadership earlier. And we didn't do a bad job of it, but it's like, we could have sat there and been a lot more intentional. That's part of my growth process too. I'm still getting better at that. How do you intentionally grow leaders in your program and grow culture and character? And I've been through a big transition of that even this year, That's why I spent the entire offseason on guys. I didn't even touch skiing, really. I spent every moment I could on talking to people about culture and talking to people about, how do you build that and make that a part of the fabric, not just something you put on a poster somewhere, but how do you build that into your program? So, and I think going through that, like I said, we did good at that, but we were just scratching the surface, I thought. But it's those little things, like I said, and if we could just slowed it down at times, and just been a little more appreciative of where we were at and the little successes, I think that'd be the biggest thing too. I'm proud of what our staff did at Tolton. We really, most programs kind of languish, for a while, until they have some success. We probably hit our success level a little early, while we were there. But then again, it was just a lot of great kids and a lot of hard work by our coaching staff and support from the community. Like I said, it was a tough thing to step away from, for sure, but definitely the right thing for me at the time was to do that. But I would say those would be the two big things I'd say we could go back on. Slow it down. And I think that's, even now I'm trying to take it apart. Slow it down, be appreciative of the moments you're in, even especially now with the season coming up.
And you kind of mentioned it was hard to step away from Tolton. And I was telling Coach Duke last night, because we talk all the time, and I was telling him a story about this guy that coaches soccer. And he's kind of from South America. His name's Marcelo Bielsa. And he went to coach Leeds United and actually got them into the Premier League, this league, after 16 years of being out of it. And what was interesting about it, as I said, when they come to interview him, he didn't really want to talk about his contract or whatever. And he actually went over there without them, the leadership, knowing, and pretty much just hung out in the town for a week and talked to people around town, asked them what the town's like, why do they believe so hard and everything, and Leeds and this, that, and the other. And my question to you would be, what really piqued your interest on the Vianney job, and why Vianney? Because I remember when you got the job and I sent you a quick text and I said, hey, congratulations. And I said, I know you're busy. We'll talk later, and you're like, yeah, we'll have to get together and say, we'll have to talk at some point. And I said, yeah, I just want you to know, congratulations. But I'm curious, why Vianney? What piqued it?
Well, it was weird because I was never even looking. That's a strange thing. And you always hear those stories about, getting jobs whenever you're not looking for them. I wasn't looking for this job. I had every intention of going to Tolton, and not only did we start a program, but I was the first athletic director. We started an entire athletic program, school. Everything from scratch, and again, real proud of the work we did there as a coach. All the coaches in our coaching, our athletic program, they did an amazing job while I was there. But I really honestly thought I'd be there for my entire career. That was my goal. That was my belief. I really felt, because I felt that I was called to be there. And I was, I really was to be that person to help start that program, start that school, start the athletic program. All that was true. What I didn't anticipate is things changing, in my life, my personal life, my thought process of things. And it wasn't me changing that, it was really, again, to get into the face side, we don't get to determine what doors open for us. God opens those doors for us. It's our job just to go through. And I was going through a time, I spent, what was it? Was it 8 years? I guess 2011 to 2000.
Yeah.
8 or 9 years. Yeah, something like that. Towards the end of that, I'd say the last year or two, I really felt that I needed to step away from, especially the administrative side of things. I started to do kind of a reassessment of my life and my values and just who I wanted to be as a person. And things always came back to me as what gets me up in the morning, what drives me, what makes me excited. And I love my athletic director experience, and I may go back to it someday in my life too. I loved having that impact on and mentoring coaching impact on multiple kids across programs. But you know what didn't get me excited was checking on officials and checking on buses and things like that. You know, like it just wasn't there for me. My heart wasn't fully into that. And I had to do right by myself at that point. And I started really thinking, okay, what drives me? Man, I love coaching kids. I love football. I love coaching them, getting up every morning. And that's what gets me excited about things. And I really missed getting an opportunity to teach in a classroom again too. You know, I didn't realize I missed that much until I started going through that. Like, so really what I was missing was those relationships, you know, those relationships you build on a field, relationships you build, you know, in a classroom where you're fully present there. You know, like it wasn't that I wasn't coaching well or I wasn't having, I had great relations with my kids. I still talk to, heck, I talk to kids from Jeff City still, you know, that I coached, you know, and I'm a relationship driven coach. But I felt like I was always having to think of something, go somewhere else. I had to leave practice, go to a booster club meeting or go supervise something. You know, I wasn't fully present. It's kind of like being that parent when you go home and your kids there want to talk to you and you're checking things on your phone or answering emails. Like I started feeling about myself, like, what do I need to do, you know, to really get back to who I am and what I feel is my most biggest impact. And for me, it was getting back into a classroom and coaching. So that started that process. And again, I just assumed I was going to do it there. You know, like I go teach, you know, history or theology or go back and teach strength conditioning. You know, I had no big aspirations on what to do there. So then what happens is, and I was actually at the state championship games that year, because I've always worked the state championship games for Mission. And started hearing some rumblings about that that there might be a change at Vianney, which was crazy to me because they were going to be in the state championship game that year. You know, I mean, they had a heck of a team, and you know, Paul Day is a good friend of mine. You know, he's been a mentor to me in the coaching world too. And I did, you know, I never really broached a topic or anything like that. Well, he resigns, you know, a couple of weeks after the season, after they won their state championship, and you know, I get a phone call. It was from their athletic director, who I knew, Terry Cochran, who I knew through a lot of athletic director meetings. He and I were on the same wavelength about the value of sports as a mission part of the school. I mean, we were like kind of cut from the same cloth when it comes to mentality of using the sport to build better young men. And he just asked me, he says, hey, would you be interested in maybe applying for this job? And at first I was kind of like, really? I don't know, you know, because that was never talked about ever. You know, I knew this guy for a long time, and you know, it wasn't like it was. You know, and I was like, well, you know, let me think about my wife's from St. Louis. You know, I was like, okay, well, you know, we used to talk about a long time, especially when I was thinking about wanting to get into Catholic coaching. That let's go ahead and, you know, maybe going to St. Louis so I can get into Catholic school coaching. Well, things just never worked out, and so we went ahead and made a decision, like, even though I really wasn't sold on it, I really wasn't thinking like I want to go, you know, make this change in my life, because I'm a mid-Missouri guy. I'm here in St. Louis, guys. I'm a mid-mo dude, you know, like people think I talk funny here. Man, we you know, literally some kid on the first day of school asked me if I lived on a farm. I said, are you serious, man? Like, really? Like, you know, like, because I came from there. I'm like, no, I mean, I didn't have the heart to say that, you know, that my dad's from a farming community, but you know, I didn't do that.
Right,
you know?
right.
And we got to like Spirit Week, and there was Country Western Day, and everybody kept asking me if I had to use clothes I could borrow. I said, contrary to popular belief, Coach Masters is not country nor Western, but you know, hey, it is what it is.
Nice.
But you know, I'm a mid-mo guy. I never saw myself doing anything different than what I was doing. You know, I had a Catholic school, a place I loved, everything else. So I went to I went and applied. We're gonna give it a shot, and I went. There's 4 different interviews I had to go through, and I just kept making the cut. The cut. I was like, then I started thinking, who the heck's the other guys on the other side, because it can't be me, you know. And then we kind of finally get to that last interview, which is about 4 hours long. Actually, it was a long one. And I'm driving home, and I was like, I was done. I was like, man, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at, you know, this or that. And I get the phone call. They actually called the next day, and they want to talk to my wife, and they talked to my wife about it. And so then I'm like, oh crap, I think something's happening. And then they gave me a call and offered me the job. And then I had some real thinking to do. I got offered a job.
Right.
I had the job of my dreams already, and I got offered this job, and I'm like, what do I do? And it was tough, guys. It was tough. I mean, really, really tough. What it came down to, and again, it's a God moment. There's a song that that speaks to me a lot, and it's Oceans. Have you ever heard that song? But there's a famous line in there that part says, "You called me out upon the waters where feet may fail." And the idea is that God's there for us, and that song. And I'm trying to, like you always hear people say, "I pray and God told me this." Man, I've always said, does God talk to you? Because I've never heard him say like, "Chad, do this," So I'm like trying to figure this out, and I'm like, and so I'm praying. I'm driving my truck. I got my playlist, which is everything from like, Lil Wayne to like Pink Floyd, I mean, it's like a randomest playlist you ever have. And so I said, I just need something. I need guidance. I need something. I don't know what to do, because part of me is like, yes, let me do this. The other part's like, no, this, Tolton's where I should be. That's my home, and that's what I've done so much to build that. And not just me, but everybody, I mean, to walk away from all that, and Oceans came on. And I realized my biggest problem was my fear of that unknown. Like, it's okay, and I did good work for 8 years there at Tolton, and I helped that place grow and develop. And maybe it was time for me at that point to say, you know what, someone else take this. Like I handed off the baton to somebody else, and maybe this place needs me, and through the process, I was learning a lot of things that they needed and wanted. And that was me, in a lot of ways, the things I brought to the table. And so it was super emotional, man. I ain't gonna lie, I cried, I really did. But again, it goes back to my wife and I talk a lot about it. Like, we don't open the doors, it's just our job to go through them when they're open for us. And I hope this is my last spot. I really do. I mean, I really do. I love this place. And I just felt it when I was there that last day when I got to meet kids. They had an interview. I got interviewed by 8 kids from not only football kids, but also other sports, and that was when it started to become real. And to walk through a hallway and see faculty and kids, and I felt home. I really did feel like I was coming to a new home. And it doesn't have to be that it wasn't been some, frustrations or some good and bad moments, and but I felt like it was okay. And then there's people that were going to pick up the torch on the back end of that back at Tolton. And I said, I think this is a big challenge for me, a big task for me, and I want to do this. It's right. It's right for my family. It really was right for my family, and it's opened a door to a lot of things for them. And it's been a true blessing. I mean, but that's kind of the long way around of that story, but there's so many layers to it, because how do you walk away from something, that I poured every fiber of my body and soul into that job. And then for it to come to a day when you're like, man, maybe I need to do something else, but I felt good about what we did. I felt good about those who would step in behind. And I think it was time to really get back to what I needed to do for my own self. And that was I got back in a classroom, which I've absolutely loved that, teaching freshman leadership of American history. I'm my attention solely focused on building this football program the way that I believe a football program should be built. And I've been blessed with that opportunity, and my life's gotten a lot simpler, and that's been a true blessing in a lot of ways too. So,
been there, done that.
Been
there, done that. So I'm going to ask a question that is not on your script.
Oh, that's fine.
I apologize, but
you're good.
In your opinion, is it harder to build a program that has nothing, or is it harder to improve and maintain a program that has everything and has just come down from the top that you can get in the state of Missouri?
That's a great question. I think in some ways, maybe your work is required more building something from scratch. Like I think it takes a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of details, a lot of work. However, you're allowed a lot more margin for error.
Hmm.
And I think
Right.
sometimes when you step into something, um, like we did when they won the state championship in 2018 to come back down in 2019 in my first year, I think that's a lot harder to manage expectation levels. Not so, and I've never felt that from our school community because they know what they want to be, and who they are, and whether you win it all, they love that. But if you don't, it's not like it's like I'm gonna be out on the street,
Right.
but your own expectation levels, again, opportunity to step into a program at that level, and the expectation levels and of kids and community and families, and sometimes those are unfounded expectations, but
Right.
I would say I think they're different, and I'll try to sit on the fence. I think they're different.
That's
I
okay.
think building a program, you're allowed a lot more margin for error. You can experiment, you can try things, and there's not as much pressure for it to be right
Yeah.
at all times. um,
Right.
And as coaches, I think we put the most pressure on ourselves. I know I did that for myself all fall. Yeah, I probably put more pressure on myself than others did. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right. Right.
But I think that'd be my answer to that question. I think anytime that there's that kind of experience level, as a school, as a community, I think there's that kind of the margin for error is smaller.
Sure.
That's why you got
Oh, it makes
to make
sense.
sure you got a solid admin and solid people around you, that understand that, and they
Right.
can provide a little top cover.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's fine because it's your experience. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no answer. The answer is you. But you brought up the interview process and how it was staged. 4 parts. It's kind of funny how there's
yeah.
4 quarters in a football game. You got 4 parts to an
Hey,
interview. Kind of
4
kind of works out
gospels
that
too.
way. 4 gospels. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
there we go.
So I want to know what was the toughest interview question you got?
Yeah.
And here's the reason I'm asking, because when I was in med school,
Mhm.
they would have one centralized kind of residency interview place. So you would go to this one hotel, all the residencies are there. You would interview for something, right? And sometimes you'd walk in and there would be a pair of surgical gloves, some ultrasound gel, and some suture there. And they would say, put the gloves on, put all the ultrasound gel all over your hands, and I want you to start tying hand sutures while we ask you questions. And I want to
Oh
see
my
how
Lord.
you can do both, right?
Hmm.
So here's
Yeah.
me. I'm like, no way, no, no, I'm not that kind of dude. So I worked while I was in medical school to get a residency offer so I wouldn't have to go do that nonsense, right? I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm skipping this process.
Uh-huh.
There's a better way to do this, right? So you're there.
Mhm.
What questions did you get that you were just like, what really?
That's a good question. And what's weird is like I felt most comfortable with the kids. If that's strange, like I
Yeah,
would thought at
absolutely.
Yeah.
first I thought I was like, what are they gonna ask me? Like I was like kind of
Yeah.
intimidated by walking to a room of 8 kids in ties, and then surrounded by administrators. I'm like, what are we gonna do here? I think that was, but once I got in there and started talking, I think I realized that wasn't there. You know, what was the toughest question? And again, my mind's been filled with so much stuff since then. It's been,
Yeah.
um, I think for me was, and the answer is not that difficult, when I think about it. But I think the toughest questions was the idea of how do I build a program, have a high level of like competitive success, like to be able to compete with teams, but at the same time not devalue or not support the mission and the values of the school. That was a big thing. And to have an answer for that, now it's easy because it's just who I am. Like I'm not going to cut corners or do something that's going to run against my own values or morals. But man, when you step into this arena here in St. Louis, I mean, it's a little cutthroat, and there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of intensity on things, that you do if you don't have a good set of core values, a true north. You could easily move one way or the other. And so I think that toughest question is for me to reflect on that and how can I verbalize, to them how I would make sure that the mission, the values, the charism, the characteristics of that school are honored, not only honored, but infused into what we do, and to have concrete reasons or examples for that. I think that was a challenge. I mean, obviously, I think I did it okay. I mean, they employed me. I signed a second contract, so I think they want to keep me around. But I think that might have been the toughest thing. I mean, the kids were awesome. I really enjoyed the interview with the kids, and that was the part I was worried about a little bit. But I was actually kind of, they could have asked me some cooler questions a little bit. They were so serious, they had their little questions. They write their notes down. It was awesome. Although one kid did ask me, he said, oh, Tolton, is that where Michael Porter went? I said, yes, that's where Michael Porter went. Yeah. Yes, I know him, it's just kind of, I get that a lot, but, it's kind of, I would say that probably was it. Like, how do you push that envelope, but at the same time, stay true to a value, And I think that's a great question for all coaches and all programs, how do you do that? That's difficult at times. I mean, I struggle with it all the time too. So,
yeah.
Chad, and speaking of kids, you had a couple big moments here in the not so distant past with your oldest son, which I remember you talking about him when he was about that tall.
Yeah, he was a little man.
Yeah, and it just seems like time flies sometimes. And so here's a good one. And, I think a lot of people have been through it. How are you dealing with him being at practice as a player instead of having that disconnect to where he might be the sounding board, but now he's there? So
it's interesting because, he's grown up in football. And I've always also been one of those guys that people would say, oh, you make your son play football. And I said, I'm not going to make my son play anything. I want him to be active. I want him to do sports, because I love sports. And I think it's good for kids to be involved in sports. But if he ran cross country or played soccer or whatever, maybe so be it. The thing I didn't want him to do was play football because he felt he had to play football to have a relationship with me. I think that would have been the bigger tragedy in my life if that would have been the case. But he loved football. The funny thing is, JR, is I honestly don't even notice him practice. I know that sounds. My wife asked me, "Well, how'd Jack do?" I don't really know. Like, I don't really know. Like, he's a quarterback and he's a defensive back. Man, I'm a line guy. I'm right in there. So I don't even interact with him a ton. Every once in a while, we kind of run across each other. He spends more of his time trying to avoid me. That's what he said the other day. Like, he doesn't want to be, like, he just tries to stay under the radar, like moves to the side or something like that. So, I found myself coaching every once in a while, but I haven't noticed him as my son out there, yet. So, I mean, again, there's a process that grows. But he's a freshman and he's at the freshman JV level. And not that I don't deal with those kids, because I do, because I really try to stay connected with our freshman all the way to our varsity level guys. But it just hasn't quite connected yet. But he's had some great moments. I mean, he's been a ball boy, state championship games. He's been a ball boy for all my teams. He was a ball boy last year too, went on to Arkansas with us. He's grown up in it. He's seen a lot of things. Heard a lot of things. It's strange because, there's moments I have to check myself now too. Like him sitting in the coach's office would not be a big thing before, but now I'm like, you gotta go to the weight room. I mean, you can't go to the locker room because we don't have locker rooms open right now. But, we're about ready to talk about some kids. Coach, I said, you got to go out. I don't want to put him in that spot, and he's a pretty good kid, pretty mature kid in a lot of ways. The thing that I think is going to be tough for him eventually is what's said about me in the locker room, and he's going to have that battle, between, you'd like to think that the kids always, say nice things about you when you're not around, but hey, we all played too, it just kind of depends on the situation. You're always pissing someone off at times, so, so this could be a tough spot for him, I think, when he gets in there, as things start kind of heating up a little bit, but it's been really cool. Like I've had to kind of check sometimes to think like it's kind of neat that he's actually on a field that I'm coaching. We'd always do a thing every year when him and his brother, growing up, myself and him, and then also now his younger brother Nate, pictures on picture day.
Wow.
And so now it's gonna be the first time this year where Jack will actually be in a uniform, of a team that I'm coaching.
Yeah.
And I've never coached him. I've never coached him. I haven't coached him in Little League baseball or anything. I have purposely kept myself out of that. A lot of people said, "Why don't you help us coach the team?" I said, "No." My biggest thing is I want the 4 years of the time me coaching him is the 4 years we spend together in high school, and I want that to be our connection and our experience, the good, the bad, everything in between. I want that to be our 4 years of experience. So it's been pretty good. We don't talk about it a lot at home, so it's not like we like have a lot of chats about football or anything like that. Every once in a while we have a few things, but he kind of learns by osmosis a lot, so he knows a lot based on just being around it a lot, I think, and hearing coaches talk and everything else. So it's been awesome so far, but again, we're just in the very tip of the very beginning of everything. So I'm notoriously hard on quarterbacks. I coach offense like an offensive lineman in a lot of ways. So, toughness is a big deal to me. And so quarterbacks have been known to butt heads through the years. One of my favorite quarterbacks, the kid I coached last year, is at Tolton, Robert Hunter. He's playing now at Central Missouri, and that kid, man, he and I would have some bouts, like even in games, just like, but that's who he was. He's a competitive gunslinger, he's one of those kids you say, he's throwing a triple coverage because he said, "Coach, I can make that throw." I'm like, "Really, dude?"
Right.
And the sad thing was, half the time he could.
He could do it, yeah.
Nice.
So I can't hate on that, but it's just
right.
So it'll be interesting to see like if he ever climbs that ladder, as he gets through the years and gets older. If he's ever in that situation, that dynamic will change a lot as he becomes like a junior to a senior level player.
Yeah.
That's gonna be an interesting, a lot different. But right now, I can just kind of step back and not, I'm like I said, I'm coaching linemen, I'm coaching, things like that. So we don't cross paths a ton, but it's when I take a step back, I guess I kind of said earlier, if I can just slow it down, take a step back, and just appreciate. Not a lot of people have an opportunity, to do this. I used to be a guy that said I used to be a guy to say I don't ever want to coach my son, but then I started thinking about it. If I'm the coach I want to be, why would I want my son to play for me?
Yep,
and there's, I know this, and you guys know a lot of coaches out there, not knocking guys, but I know a lot of coaches. I don't know if I'd want my son to play in that program, and I know in our program, we try to do things right. And so why would I not want my own son to have that same experience? So I changed that over the years, how I felt about that, but he's getting that opportunity now too. So it'll be kind of, we do a really cool ceremony with father sons in senior year. So I'll probably be a blubbering mess whenever we do that. We do it in our chapel. It's an awesome jersey exchange thing with the son, and the dad reads a letter to him, and it gets pretty emotional. And I'm just thinking,
cool.
I'm gonna have to do that in about 4 years, man. I'm gonna be a mess.
It'll be here like that.
I have to, I know that's the sad part. I have to finish letters for dads as it is. Who's gonna finish a letter for me now? I'm like, who's gonna do that? So, I'm a softie like that, though. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that's okay. Most of us are.
Yeah.
Most of us are. So I want to know, You've been all over, Coach. You are an offensive guy. You've already talked about you do stuff with the O-line, which is a perfect segue for me because JR and I believe that there's only 3 ways to run the football: inside the tackles, outside the tackles, or option, which is both inside and outside. I want to know if you say, yes, that's correct, and Breakdown Sports, aka Coach Duke and Coach Simmons, are correct, and all those other yahoos out there are wrong, or do you side with the yahoos? That's what I want to know.
Well, here's my question: do you count screen game as a run?
We have had that question by Coach Keene from WashU, and he said,
Coach
"Well,
Keene did ask.
if I can fake the inside zone and throw it, will you count that as a long handoff?" And I said, "Sure, but is it inside the tackles or outside the tackles, or is it option?" And he goes, "Then yes, it's option." So yes, we do count that.
But a straight screen, I don't even fake it. I just freaking chuck it.
Well, then that's a pass. That's not a run.
Yeah,
No, it's behind the line of scrimmage. It's a run extended.
JR,
Regardless.
what say you? Okay, well, you're gonna have to think about it, Coach. You're gonna have to think about it. I'm not gonna count that vote, JR. I'm not gonna count it because we're gonna have to go there.
I have a bumper sticker, by the way. I have a bumper sticker that I keep on my bookshelf. I got from the University of Hawaii when June Jones was there. And this is when I started really kind of morphing my offensive thought process. And it says, June would throw. So when in doubt,
throw it.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
So, I try to be a 60%, 40% pass run. I know that scares a lot of people, but it actually, if you look at it, and of course, Coach Duke, you've been around. I mean, I have no problem throwing it 5 yards down the field and get a completion. To me, that's a run. I'll take that.
Hey.
But usually I have teams that are a lot smaller and a lot less athletic than most people. So I figure out ways to do it. But I would go with your premise. There is inside the tackles, there's outside the tackles, and option football definitely is inside and outside. And I cut my teeth on option football. For me, for where been at the last, from Tolton to Vianney, it's just what I do offensively works for our kids. And I think that's just what I do. So, but definitely I think option football is a great way to have an offense too. So.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. Now, I know JR has a story. And before we get to that story, because I think it's probably going to be amazing.
That's a good story.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I'm not ready to leave.
You have been it for about an hour now, Coach. And the premise of the end of the show is it's time to tag somebody else. It's a big game of tag, and you're about to tag the next person. So let's explain. Most of the people who listen to the show knows how it works. You have to know this person.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to get their contact information. It can't be like, well, I'd like to talk to President Trump. Well, yeah, so would 200 million other people. But unless you know them, it ain't gonna work. So whoever you tag, if that person happens to be up on the list of our bucket list for JR and I, it's a secret list. We don't tell who anybody's on it. We are going to send money to your charity and his charity. For instance, we just had a gentleman on the other night. JR, I'm going to try and pronounce his last name correctly.
All right,
Ian LePerrier.
That's pretty good. LePerrier. Yep.
Okay. Head coach or assistant coach for the Philadelphia Flyers. Am I right so far,
wow.
JR?
Yep. You're doing good.
Still going.
You've come a long way in a week.
I've come a long way in hockey in a week. We had him on last week. We're sending money to his charity. They picked a phenomenal charity. So tag away, my friend. Who are you going to tag?
Oh, see, I just know high school coaches. Like
That's fine.
I'm kind of boring. I guess. I don't know.
So are we.
Or something.
I mean,
one of my good friends, I don't know if you've had him on here, but the guy is amazing. That's Curtis Jasper.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Down at Joplin High School.
Yeah, that'd be
At
awesome.
Joplin. Yeah, Joplin.
Yeah. Curtis, took Joplin to the state finals last year in Class 6.
Yeah.
Had to
Hey,
spit on the ropes.
Let's not talk about the playoff game that he used to get. The playoff game that he used
Well,
to get
hey.
It is what it is.
What's funny, though, is, I'm also friends with Judd Nager at Valley Catholic. And when Curtis is at West Strand, they face Valley in the state finals. Curtis's other appearance in the state finals. And I would say Curtis' Western team was a little bit more favored. Well, what's funny is they played earlier in the year. Well, then all of a sudden the go-ahead touchdown by Valley was one of Curtis's plays that Judd liked and took, because that's what he'll do sometimes. And
that's awesome.
And Curtis is like, man, he took my own play.
That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome. Curtis would be great Curtis, on here.
Yeah,
it'd be great.
He's a great guy. Yeah, I got his contact info for sure.
Awesome.
But he's a big zone guy. He and I are on the same page, inside, outside zone, and throw the ball a little bit. So he would definitely follow the Joplin stuff, the option football of the zone to screen. That was definitely they made a lot of money off of last year. I think their quarterback had like a 70-something% completion rate. Ungodly.
Okay, are we still talking about this?
He had a dude who could catch. I remember that guy.
Yeah, he had like three. He had like three of them.
I remember that guy.
He had like three of them, and a guy who could run it. Yeah, and the guy who can run it. Yeah,
had a couple decent players.
Well, hey, listen, JR. Now, to be fair, to help us a little bit, we did score pretty well to start it off.
Yeah,
we just couldn't keep up. They were scoring like 98% of their possessions. Yeah. Okay, I mean, we were not scoring 98%.
This will be a good conversation if he comes on.
It will be.
This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be good.
We're getting
okay,
first.
JR. Yeah.
And he's a good guy,
JR,
man. He's awesome. So,
all right, here's the story. So I want to see if Chad remembers this, because I still remember this. And I still laugh about this occasionally.
Oh, good Lord.
We were down at Zumwalt West. Yeah. And we were playing them when it was the TJ Moe show, which it was a show. Mm-hmm. And Coach Thomas, who was running our defense at the time, couldn't find a dry erase marker. And I'm on top of the box with Coach Briggs and a couple other guys. I remember vividly. And, I was on the computer at that time, which that was a whole nother deal with, what was that? Whatever that program was, game day. I was about ready to throw that thing off the top of the press box. It was awful. And I hear everybody talking about we need to get a dry erase marker. And poor Chad got tasked with trying to find a dry erase marker. You must have checked every door at that school trying to get into our locker room, and it just became this entire saga of he's at this door, and then we just kept looking. Now he's down here. Now he's down here. Now he's down here. And it's funny because over the years, occasionally that will come up, and those of us that were there still laugh about it because, hey, you got a dry erase marker. It's just you had to be there, but I figured you'd enjoy that story.
Yeah, that definitely was if anyone knows Mark Thomas, Mark is not a man to mince words either.
No.
and we were in a game, and I remember vividly because we had that. I'm gonna blame Shannon Jolly because I think he left the thing locked in the locker room, but all of a sudden Barry Blake turns to me and says, "You got to find a dry erase marker, whatever you can do." And I was like,
"That was great."
And so, I checked everything on the sideline. I knew it was one in the locker room. And then we couldn't find that. I couldn't find an administrator to let us in. And finally, I knew I had to do it. I went up into the press box and asked Mark Thomas for a dry erase marker in the middle of the game.
It was great.
He just handed it to me and gave me this steely-eyed look. And what's funny was we tried to do without a dry erase marker at first. We were trying to move kids on the bench like a live chess game at first, and he's just yelling at us. And so the funny thing about it was obviously Mark was not overly happy at that moment, but then we ended up winning the district championship that year.
Yeah.
And he had a little get together at his little, like his condo or his house or whatever. And he gave us all gifts, and he gave me a pack of Expo markers and a dryer. It was hilarious. We had a great laugh about that one. But and like I said, we bring it up to him now, and he just starts starts chuckling about
Mark's
it.
fantastic. He's got a very dry sense of humor that once you get used to it, it's okay. That was a good
story right there.
I figured you'd remember that one. Nice. I still think of that occasionally. So still think
I also
of that.
remember one of the ones from Jeff City when we played Webster Groves, and they had Daryl Jackson and AJ Claiborne guys. And we had that barn burner of a game up there. And I remember being on the headset, and you guys been this before, and everybody's got ideas all the time during the game, right? Like, oh, run this or do this, Right. Well, man, they get the ball and they're driving. Like, and Daryl Jackson would have been a star at the college level. He got himself some trouble, but I just remember, so everybody's got these suggestions over there, and Drew Danner was the defensive coordinator
Drew.
that year. And Drew gets he's throwing everything out, but the wood sheet, trying to figure anything out to stop this offense. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Drew gets thinking about midfield, and Drew has his voice, and it cracks. And he goes, "Hey guys, anyone got any ideas?" Crickets. Couldn't hear it. Oh man. They ended up scoring, and they needed to kick an onside kick for a chance to win the game. And Ross Steiner
took it to the end zone.
Bounce, took it to the end zone. Yeah, that was – I don't know how that was one of those ones you leave the game, you're drenched in sweat. You're just like, how do we get out of that game right there?
Right,
so,
right.
Those are some good ones. Those are some good days there, man. It's been
been some stories around here. That's for darn sure.
Some that we don't need to talk about either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is over here. There you go. I got one. So
good. What's funny is since that day, I'm never without a pen or a dry erase marker. Like it is ingrained in my head now that I have that Expo dry erase marker with me, either in my bag or my pocket, man. I don't mess around. I think I got some PTSD from that night right there.
That was a good night.
Yeah, that was a fun great time. Win for us that night too.
I still remember Frank Bryant caught TJ Moe in midair on the goal line and carried him backwards, and that won the game. It was 56-55. I will never forget it.
It was crazy
game. The heck of a game.
That's crazy.
Heck of a game.
Oh, man, JR, this has been a good time. I've enjoyed it. Coach Masters, great stuff, man. Great stuff.
I hope I didn't dishonor your podcast.
Oh, please. Listen, we've had naked guys walking down the highway stories. We've had superintendents who were rodeo clowns.
Taking a hearse through McDonald's. We've had some good ones,
man. A hearse through McDonald's, an embalmer. You cannot know. No. This has been awesome, and I could see why Vianney said, Coach Masters, we not only want you, but we want your family. Class act them calling your wife and talking to her. Perfect fit down there.
Their administration, I cannot say anything negative about. I mean, they're unbelievable people who know what's important, and care a lot about that place. And it's a special place. Like I didn't realize it until I really got into it, how amazing it was going to be. And again, that's not a knock on anything else. It's just, it just has something to it that's special, and it's been a weird last year. So, I mean, if you want to think about it that way, but we're having to get a lot creative with a lot of things right now. But nonetheless, it's been awesome. So I was blessed with this. So left a great place, but landed at an even better one in my mind.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication to the young men of, St. Louis and even Columbia and Tolton. And thank you for your faith. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For J.R. Simmons, I'm Coach Duke. That's Coach Masters. This has been Breakdown Sports Process, Preparation, and Performance. We're out.